Welcome to Ask the Retoucher, and to all of our millions of listeners on the internet, including, I believe we have one in the chat room now. And looks like it's Dennis. So welcome, Dennis, and welcome to all those who are tuning in to this edition of Ask the Retoucher. We took a couple weeks off. Holidays were upon us here in the United States. There was Christmas and New Year's, and it just seemed with all the work that I had to do personally, just with business, and predicting that a lot of people would be taking time off, I decided, why not? I'll take some time off too. But I don't think that that I really could take time off fully, because I was always thinking about what am I going to talk about when I get here. Well, you never know. Sometimes people send in questions, and this happened to be that time where we had some contacts. I think that whenever I get a question from someone such as yourself, someone who wants to know a little bit more, how do I use Photoshop or some photo editing program to get something done? What's the best technique? What do you suggest? It's always more exciting for me as an instructor, because this is unplanned, unstaged, and unpredictable. One question I got was the related to what we covered. I think it was a few shows prior, regarding scanners. And I got a contact through the allexperts.com website, and in fact, I think I will show that to you right here, and so I'm going to pop that on the screen for you, just in case you want to know. It's a great resource, allexperts.com. And this is in the about.com network. I think who owns it? New York Times owns it. Yeah. So you can do a search here on the screen for what you're looking for. Let's see if I type in Photoshop. Let's see what comes up. You can do anything, really. And of course they have nice little ads there. All kinds of questions here. For some reason it really got big. Zoomed in there. Answers by all kinds of answers. So you can ask how to ask. Click on here. We can click on just step 1 to start an index search, and again we'll type in Photoshop. That's what I did before, trying to follow these steps. I actually don't ask myself a lot of questions. So, clicked on this question here, and we can click on Adobe Photoshop, and all kinds of information. I'm not quite sure how people find me. This is someone else, but what I did is I was able to bookmark one of my questions. Let's see. This was probably the one I just looked up. So let's go down a little bit. Yeah. Yeah. So this is a question I asked. So here's my. I'm in the photography realm, transferring old pictures to digital. Maybe they should move me, but whatever. I've been on there for so long, so many years. It doesn't matter to me. So people ask me questions right through this format. And of course, since you have direct contact with me through this class, you don't need to go through all those steps. You could just go into the chat room. You could just send me a question on live stream, we have a ticker symbol going across the screen. It displays the contact information. You can use that. And we are using Skype, so PGXU Live is the information. And take you right here on the screen, and if you're right here with us, you go right in the chat room and do your thing. Let me close that so we don't get a lot of feedback. So let's jump right to a question. And this one came in just recently, as I said, regarding scanners. It is someone named Francine, and she asked, she happened to be at the Vernon Hills Library here in the Chicagoland, Illinois, USA area when I was doing a workshop, and she said she could contact me if she had any questions. This is great. She says her sister wants to scan her husband's slides and asked me, Francine, if I knew what kind of scanner she should use. I recall you said you preferred Epson in general, and that there is some really expensive scanner out of the question, but I don't remember the rest about what you said about scanners and the kinds of slide scanners. She has a Mac. I may be thinking of scanning my father's pictures into my PC. I don't know if there were some that worked for one operating system but not for the other. We would not be sharing our scanners. Well, good news, and I did tell her that, good news that Epson scanners you can use for one platform or the other. When you buy this scanner, it has a driver software that you can install on a PC or install on a Macintosh, and it'll work. At least it should work if you install it right. That's key. And to help you out, I have on my homepage at photographics.pro, I have what's called up here the do-it-yourself photo retouching. And you click that, and you'll have something called Photographics University, Tools of the Trade. Under Tools of the Trade, Software Hardware. Click right there. Make sure you turn off your ad blocking software if you have it, because these little thumbnails won't show up. And I have software that I recommend and hardware. As you get down, some accessories, and here's my scanners. So I have various Epson scanners here that are at great prices, various ranges, and these are exceptional. In previous talks, I have suggested that you can get the Nikon Coolscan 35mm scanners. Nikon's not making them anymore, and they are very pricey now on the secondary market. It's a shame because they made a really good scanner. However, you're not out of luck, because the technology that Epson is utilizing and other scanner software is pretty good, and you can get a flatbed scanner that has what's called a transparency tray. I go over that briefly in a previous show that we did. I think it was the one before this one, or real close to this one. It was definitely around November or December of 2010. Check out the archives. One way you can do that is when you go to the website, you'll go to that do-it-yourself store and click on downloads, and I often update these. You will not necessarily see them right away, like the one I just discussed actually isn't on here yet, but we do, and that's because I have not completed what I call the blog entry for it, where we give a step-by-step of what I'm talking about. Still working on that. As soon as we have that, it'll be up there. definitely try to follow us on Twitter. Check out our Facebook page. That's a great way to stay updated, because every time I do something new, I update it there. And you can check that out. And of course, the way to do that is to, of course, you can go to here, like Photographics on Facebook. Or, like I said, the easiest one really is to just to go to twitter.com and Photographics. And you'll see every single update. Here I am updating everyone that I'm being late. And so that's what I recommend you do for the scanners. Is just go to my site, comparison shop right there. Epson, I think, is really good. Of course, the higher the cost, the greater the resolution, and you want something with a transparency tray. If you got any other questions, just send me a message. I'll be glad to assist you. Now, another question we got, and this was also on allexperts.com. Will a printed photo from a computer copier fade if matted and framed? It has great color and clarity now. And essentially, the one that she worked on, that she had printed, looks really good. She's really happy with it, but she wants to know, will it fade? And you know, this is one of those questions is I need a little more information in order to give you an accurate answer, but I can get close. And the same principle applies for everybody, regardless of your printer. The important aspects that you need to keep in mind with longevity of the prints from your computer's copier or your printer is paper, number one, and number two, ink. And brand is important, and it can be a big, what you call a big headache, if you are not conscious of these things. Pretty much the only brands that are out there that are viable are indeed the Epson and HP and Canon. The rest of them, when it comes to photos, you know, don't have the best reputation. Doesn't mean that they're bad. However, I think that Epson is definitely the top of the line when it comes to printing your photos. And I personally use an HP for, it's mostly office printing. You know, I'm printing invoices, printing letters, whatever, that kind of thing. And I really don't print a lot of photos. I actually have a lab print my photos from digital files. So you have paper you have to consider, and then you have ink. Paper should be paper that is produced by the manufacturer of the printer. So if you have an Epson printer, I recommend getting Epson photo paper. Not everyone does that. That's fine. Just my recommendation. The other part is the ink. If you have an Epson printer, you should get what is called Epson ink. If you have HP, same thing. If you have an HP printer, HP ink, HP paper. It's that simple. The other part, dealing with framing. If you can keep the paper off of the glass, so you have your paper here, and your glass or your plastic, whatever it is, of the frame goes on it like that. If you can get the glass so there's a little gap, you know, just a little gap between the glass and the paper, that would be a matte board. you will prevent possible problems, especially if a little bit of moisture gets in between there. It'll keep the print from sticking to the glass. And when that happens, ooh, what a hassle. And I've worked on some pictures just like that. So we'll get right back to that in a minute.
What makes a good scan?
What is a selection?
What are layers?
What is resolution?
What is a JPEG?
What is TIFF?
What is RGB?
How do I crop a picture?
What is a zoom tool?
What is a clone stamp?
What are levels?
My name is Eric Basir, and I have produced this unique photo restoration and retouching foundations video course to answer all these questions and more. In my classes and workshops, I have taught hundreds how to preserve and restore their personal photographic collections with Adobe Photoshop and Adobe Photoshop Elements. Now you can have me as your personal instructor in this 10-lesson course. After studying the videos and easy-to-read workbook, you'll finish with a firm foundation of how to use Adobe Photoshop or any other photo editing program confidently and correctly. We're going to go right into, we'll go back a little bit, and when I go back, I'm going to go back to where I left off for the ad, and we'll catch up. And that way when I do the final cut for the show, we'll edit out that horrible part with no sound. So when you want to listen to it again, it'll be fixed. So here we are, a picture, let me uncrop that. It looks fuzzy. It looks soft. It looks blurry. How do we know it's blurry? That's the question. How do you determine that a picture's really out of focus? Or was there movement? What's the difference between the two? Well, look at the background. If there is a background to look at, I notice this background is sharp. Look at the detail in the background there, whatever that is back there. Dismiss the dust and scratches in the holes. You compare that to the foreground. Foreground is soft. So that means, for sure, the background was in focus, foreground was not. We have a selective focus problem. Instinctively, especially when we have the tools of Photoshop, we want to sharpen this thing. We want to fix it right away. So what we do is we end up, rushing in. I'm going to fix this one. We go maybe to the unsharp mask filter and we start pulling sliders and doing things like this and trying to get it sharp. And we say, wow, look at that, it's sharper. Is it really? Let's zoom in close. Before, after. Zoom in again. Before, after. This is not sharpening. This is in fact building contrast between light and dark pixels. That's what it is. Yes, boys and girls, the unsharp mask tool is an illusion. And I rarely teach the use of this filter. And this is why. Because it's an illusion. And it's a dangerous one. I'll tell you why. Take a look. When you build up the contrast between the pixels, look at what else happens. I'm zooming out now. Before, after. You exaggerate the defects. See? So you can select and do it, but again, you must be careful. This filter should be used on at the tail end of your work. So if you have restored a picture or just scanned something in, color corrected a little bit, maybe cleaned up some spots, maybe removed a mark somewhere, a strange badge on someone's lapel, maybe someone missed, you can clean that up. The last thing you do is sharpen. And when you sharpen a copy. You sharpen a copy. So the frame has a, we were talking about the frame, which we did lose audio for that part. So I'll go back over that. When we were talking about framing things, is you should always frame a copy of the picture and display the copy of the picture. Don't display the original. Don't display that original image, display a copy of it. So when you're sharpening, you should sharpen on a duplicate layer or on another file. Do your sharpen, print it, or email it, whatever you want to do with it, and you can even get rid of it, because the way you sharpen pictures today may not necessarily be the way you sharpen pictures in the future. And when you work with this this filter, you'll notice that you may not like what you've done, and you want to be able to go back and start anew with it. So even when I work on commercial images, from these are images that are sold or used for merchandise, to display merchandise, I rarely sharpen. And when I sharpen another layer or another copy of it and give it to the client. Some of them specifically say, well, I need you to sharpen the product or the logo, or you need to sharpen the eyes. Well, that's what I do then. But otherwise, I really don't do it. And I don't think it's necessary, because it can get you into more trouble in the long term. Back to that picture. So the sharpening, just to go over this briefly, is this filter is quite simple once you understand the principles. Okay. Amount is what it is. It's the amount of sharpening throughout the entire image. That is the pixels which will have a buildup of contrast between light and dark, the intensity of it. Now the radius is the area between the light and the dark pixels. So the smaller the radius, the more narrow it is. When you increase the radius, it actually builds up in those areas, and you'll see how the detail pops out. So before, after. This is no sharpening. This is sharpening. Now that radius, though, when you bring the radius down, and you see the radius, you see when we sharpen like this, it actually increases the what you call the noise, digital noise. Conventional photographers who understand film might say, oh, this is like grain. Technically, no. It's actually noise. And the noise builds up in different channels of color. So what you do, I'm giving you a crash course. Keep your amount a little low. Build up your radius a little bit when you have a soft focus picture like this. Now threshold is neat, because threshold can help you when you are trying to be conscious of the noise, or the so-called grain. Because what it does is it brings down the areas that are sharpened. So as you notice, okay, the threshold of 11 levels really only affects these highlight areas. Now if I bring the threshold to 0, it affects the entire image. Bring the threshold up to even more levels, and of course there's 255 levels in a channel of color. You really don't see anything. There's really no difference because you brought the threshold up. So this is neat to use when you really just want to sharpen certain areas. But be aware, you have to understand where the levels of color are at. Okay? And this is a pretty flat picture, so we're not going to have much working room. So again, I wouldn't work on this. I wouldn't work on this as far as sharpening at this stage. The first stage would be to take the picture. Of course, we've analyzed the picture. We would crop it to its appropriate size. So, as you see here, we have a border. So that border, I would crop that out, because I could put that border back in at the end, no problem. The reason why is because if I have to rebuild and clean up areas on the edges, this white area is going to be a problem. It's going to cause me to have to do a little more work, spend a little more time than I would need to. That's key. So we'd crop it. And, with the crop tool, you can account for the little imperfections in the frame. And return. And at this point, I would save a copy of it. The next step would be to get rid of the major defects. And there's various ways to do that. The most conventional method would be the clone stamp tool. Right over here. Rubber stamp. And with this tool, you want to be careful because it's really just copying and dropping in areas. So this will be my source. This is my destination. I have some really good exercises on this in my course. Make you pretty sharp, pretty fast. If you get that clone stamp tool just right and you know how to use that right, you can use what's called the healing brush. Only problem though, and let me show you that healing brush over here. Watch this. When you go over this white area in here, it kind of gives you a ghost effect. See? So that's where clone stamp or rebuilding the area might help. Now be careful, the more you clone stamp and work an area, the fuzzier it gets. So you start losing real grain and it messes with the noise and the texture. And you reintroduce more scratches. Because this has so many imperfections in it. Now using the clone stamp, I will work on an area like right there in the shoulder. But here's where the healing brush come in pretty nice, because these are edges that end. And I like the healing brush for this factor because it's sensitive to light. Clone stamp doesn't care, it's just cloning one area to another. Healing brush is not doing that. So we'll go on maybe in a what you call a next session, deal a little more with this, and we'll if I have no other emergencies or questions between now and then, we'll just go right back into this one and pick up where we left off, and we'll fix it live and talk about it as I go through it. And I really hope that you enjoyed this episode. We have lots of technical difficulties this week. It's not usually like that, but I was at a board meeting for another organization, and it was running late. And I thought I had to cancel, and then didn't have to cancel. But I started late. And, of course, we had little problems with my mic, and I was blaming it on live stream. Take care of yourselves and have a great evening. And to our guest in the chat room, thank you so much for joining us. And please Tell a few friends. There's a share button on there. Tell your friends about the show, and if it's useful to you, that's even better, because we need more people to know a little more about how to handle their pictures properly. I'm Eric Basir. This is the Ask the Retoucher live program. Hope to see you next week on time. Thank you very much.